Okay, so Shabbat Shalom. So, of course, little attendance tonight because people are getting ready for Yom Kippur on Tuesday, which is going to be a big day. So this Shabbat is a special Shabbat in the Jewish year. First, it's the first Shabbat of the year. So, and also it's a Shabbat that has a specific name. Do you remember what's the name of this Shabbat? Shuvah. Okay, so Shabbat Shuvah is, in the past, in the old days, the rabbis would come up to the Bima only twice a year. Shabbat Shuvah and Shabbat Hagadol. So Shabbat Shuvah was about to explain all the process of Teshuvah, and I brought some text that you can study together, talking about Teshuvah for Yom Kippur, the process which started on Rosh Hashanah, and of course Shabbat Hagadol before Pesach to explain all the rules about the special kashrut for Pesach. So of course today rabbis, you can see them every Shabbat. They write something every Shabbat. But in the old days it was just like that, twice a year. So let's do maybe first a bit of Shabbat warm-up with some Shabbat songs. Shall we? Okay, let's start maybe with lighting the Shabbat candles. Who wants to light maybe Hilary, I will ask you to light the Shabbat candles. Okay? So, you need everything is there, so please stand. Page 75.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivonu lahadlik le'ashel Shabbat.
You may sit. I'm just going to check if we have people online tonight. Oh, great. So, I can see that Roma is online. Shabbat Shalom, Roma. Alexander as well. Shabbat Shalom. Sibyl. I hope everything is okay for you, Sibyl, at the moment. Sandra Levin, Shabbat Shalom to you. Anna and anyone else. Oh gosh, I need to... It's weird when you hear your own voice. It's kind of, wow. This is...
Moses never had this problem.
No, never. So, and of course, all of you who are on the other channels of KLS, YouTube and Twitter. And so tonight, for those who just joined us, we are going to have a few Shabbat songs to get ready for Shabbat, and then a study session on Teshuvah, because it's Shabbat Shuvah. Page 76. Shalom Aleichem, Malachi Asharet, Malachi Elyon, Mi Melech, Malachi HaMelachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Moachem leShalom, Malachi Ashalom, Malachi Elyon, Mi Melech, Malachi HaMelachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Bachuni leShalom, Malachi Ashalom, Malachi Elyon, Mi Melech, Malachi HaMelachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzedchem leShalom, Malachi Shalom, Malachi Elyon, Mi Melech, Malachi HaMelachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. turn the page to page 78, Yedid Nefesh. Souls, beloved, source of mercy, draw your servant to your will. Let me leap like a deer to stand in awe before your glory. Your love is sweeter than the taste of honey. Yedid Nefesh Avarachaman Meshoch Avdecha El Retzonecha Yarutz Avdecha Kemo Ayal Ishtachavel Mul Hadaral Yeravlo Yedidotecha Minofet Suf Vechol Ta'am Yaralai la 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 Yaralai la 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 Yaralai la 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 Yaralai la 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 Yaralai la 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 Yaralai la 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 Yaralai la 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 Yaralai la 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 Yaralai la 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 Yaralai la 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 Yaralai la 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 Yaralai la 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 Yaralai Higalena ופרוס חביב עלי את סוכת שלומר תאיר ארץ מכבודך נגיל לך ונשמחה בה מהר אהוב כי במועד וכוננו ירלי לי לי ירלי לי לי ירלי לי 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 ירלי לי לי ירלי לי לי ירלי לי 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 ירלי Okay. I was just looking at the Erev Shabbat songs we have in our prayer books on page 644. Yom Zeh leIsrael, Ora v'Simcha. This day is for Israel a day of flight and joy. Shabbat Menucha 644. You bade us standing assembled at Sinai, that all the years through we should keep your behest, to set out a table full laden to honor the Sabbath. Is laden or laden? Laden, thank you. Okay, so it's a bit upbeat, so let's bring a bit of energy for Shabbat. Yom Zeh leIsrael, Ora v'Simcha, Ora v'Simcha, Shabbat Menucha. Yom Zeh leIsrael, Ora v'Simcha, Shabbat Menucha. Shabbat Menucha. ציווית פיקודים במעמד סיני, שבת ומועדים לשמור בכל שנה, לעבור לפני מעשת ברוכה, שבת מנוחה, שבת מנוחה. יום זה לישראל, אורה ושמחה. אורה ושמחה, שבת מנוחה, יום זה לישראל, אורה ושמחה, שבת מנוחה, שבת מנוחה. חמדת הלבבות לאומה שבוכה, לנפשת נרבות נשמה יתרה, מנפש מצחה יסיר הנחה, שבת, שבת מנוחה, שבת, שבת מנוחה. יום זה לישראל, אורה ושמחה, אורה ושמחה, שבת מנוחה. יום זה לישראל, אורה ושמחה, שבת, שבת מנוחה, שבת, שבת מנוחה. קידשת ברכת אותו מכל ימים, וששת כילית מלאכת עולמים, בו מצאו הגויים השקטו בטחה, שבת, שבת מנוחה, שבת, שבת מנוחה. יום זה לישראל, אורה ושמחה, אורה ושמחה, שבת מנוחה. יום זה לישראל, אורה ושמחה, שבת, שבת מנוחה, שבת, שבת מנוחה. יום זה. So just looking at the other ones. I'm not sure if I know. Yaribon alam ve'ol maya, ana ol maya, ana umal kamel malchaya. 647. Okay. I'm not sure if I know the chorus. Yaribon alam ve'al maya, ve'al maya. Ana umalka melech malchaya, melech malchaya. Ana umalka melech malchaya, melech malchaya. Can't remember now. Is it just a da 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 da? Oved gevuta v'timcha. Okay, so it might be a bit. I need to rehearse. So it's we've got da 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 da. Yeah, okay, fine. I need to have him sing it in ages. Okay, so we have a complete Lecha Dodi, which we almost never sing in this part of the CD on page 641. So it's much longer than what we sing. So
in that case, can we have a different tune for each verse, please?
For each verse, okay. Okay, I'm not sure if I know. Yeah.
We should know a different tune.
10 verses.
Yeah, 10 verses. Do we not?
I'm still only just learning these songs as it is.
That's all right.
Yeah, this is how
This
it.
way you'll be exposed to every tune that we do because we do the same one every time.
Yes.
That is true.
Okay. Lecha dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela.
Lecha dodi likrat kala.
Oh, let's do the. You didn't want to do the verse.
We'll do the verses first.
We do the verse and then you can jump on the next one.
Okay.
Okay. Now, Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad, Yishmiyanu el hameyuchad, Adonai echad u'shemao echad, Leshem ultiferet v'litehila.
Lecha dodi likrat kala,
Yalala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. kala, yalalai, 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 pnei Shabbat nekabela. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha, ki mekor haberacha. Merosh mikeder nesucha, sof maaseh hashavat techila. Next one. Lecha dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. Mikdash melech melucha, kumitzechi mitorafecha. Habla shevet b'mekabacha, ve'yuchlachamol alaichem la. It's very difficult to change a tune, huh? Lecha dodi likrat kala. There's oh gosh.
That's what we just did.
How many different tunes are there?
There are thousands, maybe not thousands, but hundreds. But the thing is, when you have one in your head, it's very difficult. Which one do you have? I don't actually. This one I don't know.
Many years ago.
Gosh, yes, I don't know this one. Which one did you have?
I was trying the ancient careless one.
Yes.
That's
The same one.
So
I don't know if it's the one that you sang actually. I think, yes, yeah.
well, okay, back to the original.
Yeah, so I really want to remember the other ones. Lecha dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. Itnahari me'afach u'milishvi bigdei tifaterami al yad ben ishai bet alagmi kovaena shigeala. Dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. Hitoreri, ki va'orech uri shitaveri. Kevod Adonai alayich nigdal lecha dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. Boi v'shai. Let's finish with that because I'm not sure. Unless, do you have other tunes?
Well, we found 5.
We found 5 already. Yes.
Yeah, so we could use.
So we
five
let's.
for that.
There's another one.
song.
Oh gosh, the one that they use in Bournemouth, and I never heard about that. And it's Flora Azuleh. She's the cantor there, and she brought this from. She's from Morocco, and she brought it from Morocco. But
I've probably heard it, but I can't
gosh,
pull it out.
yes.
I think we found 5 tunes. Just the first 5 verses. Let's use the same 5 for that.
Yes. Okay. Let's do this. Do you remember which one? Start. Lecha dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. והיו למשיסה שוסעיר, ורחקו כל מבלעיר, יהסיס עלייך אלוהיר, כמשוש חתן על כלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה.
Oops.
It's so hard to change from so that will לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. ימין ושמאל תפרוצי ואת אדוני תריצי על ידיש בין פרצי ונשמחה ונגילה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. בואי ושלום עטרת בלה, גם בשמחה ובצולה, תוך אמוני עם סגולה. בואי חלה, לה 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 לה, לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. Wow, it was really funny.
It's not 26.
Yeah, thank God it's not 20 verses, yes, yeah. Okay, so I brought just 2 texts for tonight. Can I ask you to pass this around? So Shabbat Shuvah. So I can see that Jenny has joined us, Michelle, Deborah, David. So we're doing a bit of a medley tonight because it's a different type of service. And we are going to do some Torah study now. Oh gosh, I don't have... If I send it to your email address, can you put it on the screen or no?
How is Jenny?
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to do this very quickly, so you can put it on the screen.
Can you put that on the chair?
Yeah, should arrive. Okay, so the first, it's from Tractate Berachot, from the Talmud, and it took me some time to understand, what it actually really means, because it's kind of a weird thing. So the place where those who do teshuvah stand, the perfectly righteous are unable to stand, and we need a bit of Hebrew here. So, Amar Rav Abahu, Makom, Sheba'alei Teshuvah Omdin. So the place where the Ba'alei Teshuvah, which means, today Ba'alei Teshuvah are people who are returning to orthodoxy. They call themselves Ba'alei Teshuvah. They say we return to weird ways. You know, we were progressive Jews and we become Orthodox again, so we do teshuvah. But in the Talmud doesn't mean that. There's people who actually master. Baal is a master. The place where the Baalei Teshuvah Omdim stand, like Amidah, you know, standing, is a very important word in Hebrew. Tzadikim gemorim einam omdim. The complete, the full tzadikim, righteous, perfectly righteous, einam omdim, cannot, or no, do not stand. Okay, so how do you understand that?
They don't have to, because they already are perfectly righteous.
Yes, okay, yeah.
Is it about self-identification that, like, to be that a Jewish person knows that he or she is not perfectly righteous, that they're flawed, and therefore if you consider yourself perfectly righteous, you're not really doing it properly?
There's something along these lines, I think, yes, yeah. Think about the word makom. Makom is a kind of interesting word in Hebrew because it means the place, and there's a kind of... It's also used for God, absolutely. And do you remember in the Akedat Yitzhak, you know, there's this idea when Abraham lifted up his eyes and he saw a makom merachok, the place that was far away. And the makom in the Jewish tradition, in that particular text, is actually the Temple of Jerusalem. So makom is a name for God, and it's kind of a place that is hidden in plain sight, so to speak. So if you, I mean, that's one interpretation. I'm not saying that is exactly what the text wants to say, because it's always open, but I made a bit sense of it when I thought about this word makom as God. Makom shebaalei teshuvah omdim. So those who are doing teshuvah, who are in the process, are in this makom. But in this makom, the perfectly righteous cannot stand. So how do you understand that? You had something, I think, Ella. You had something here.
Well, teshuvah is a change of direction, isn't it?
Lashuv is, yeah, lashuv means to return. Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So to return, you have to change direction.
Yes.
But if you are perfectly righteous, no direction you can look in is an improvement.
Yeah, that's the point, yes. You're completely static. There's no, it's perfect. There's nothing you can improve. So what would you make of it? I think it's an interesting point as well.
You can still stand there and think, I'm
yes,
stuck.
I'm stuck. I'm perfectly righteous, so what am I going to do now?
How do you know that you're perfect?
Sorry?
How do you know you're perfect?
If you think you're perfect, you're probably not.
Well,
Yeah.
maybe that's the point that the rabbi
Yeah.
wanted to get across.
Yeah.
I mean, this time of year, the High Holy Days, it's about atonement and about self-improvement, isn't it?
Mm.
So, I mean, you wouldn't have chosen this quote today if it wasn't, you know, something to do with sort of relevant at the moment.
Mhm.
So, yeah, it's kind of about, to me, it feels like it's about accepting that you're not perfectly righteous, that none of us are, and that that's okay because we're all moving in different directions.
Mhm.
We're all moving in, hopefully, directions that are towards perfectly righteous.
Mm-hmm. It's a very good point. And Russell, the question was very interesting. So, how do you know that you're perfectly righteous? And Ella responded, if you believe that you're perfectly righteous, maybe there's something wrong. And you know, if I tie all the knots together, I think we've got a very interesting view on that. You know, what Lynn said about Teshuvah being a movement. If you're perfect, it's kind of a boring place, you know, you've arrived, and can anyone actually arrive there? No. And I guess when you are in the makom, is when you are in connection with God. Because Teshuvah is a process that we do with God. But if you are not, the perfectly righteous are not in this makom, they can't be there. Because we're perfectly righteous. Who is actually perfectly righteous, if you think?
Nobody.
You can't. It's impossible. So I thought it's a nice way to instill a bit of, a bit of, maybe a bit of humility, or just understanding that this makom, where we are going during Yom Kippur, is a place for the perfectly righteous don't exist. It's impossible. Yeah, please, yes. Yeah. Do we have a text for Ahmad? So. Right. So I thought it's funny because sometimes you read something like this and you just, okay, hold on. Really? Okay, so now Maimonides, Maimonides died in 1203 in Fustat in Cairo. And he spent almost his entire life in Egypt. But he was born in Spain, and he moved, one of the many times of the Spanish Jews were actually a victim of prejudice. So one day he decided to move, so he moved to the Middle East, he went to the land of Israel, so his tomb is actually in northern Israel today, but he lived in Fustat, in Cairo, for an important part of his life. And he wrote Mishneh Torah, which is, Mishneh means repetition of Torah, which is one of the first legal codes we have of Jewish law. Because Jewish law is everything in the Talmud, but good luck if you want to find an answer, because we have to go through these 47 tractates with thousands of pages, and even when you read, like what you just read, it's quite obscure. So people like Maimonides have put together a kind of compendium of summary of the law, and it's organized, in several tractates like the Talmud, etc. But one of the books in the Mishneh Torah is about repentance, about teshuvah. And it's interesting because teshuvah is it's almost an emotional response to where we are, and he managed to make it a kind of a process. So this is what he says. Who wants to read? Yeah.
Teshuvah and Yom Kippur only atone for transgression between humans and God, such as one who eats forbidden food or has a forbidden sexual relationship. But transgressions between a person and her fellow, such as physical harm or verbal harm or stealing, those are never forgiven until she gives her fellow what she owes him and he is appeased.
Okay, we're going to stop here because we have a first very important idea about Yom Kippur in the first two paragraphs. And it's interesting because even today sometimes people have misconception about Yom Kippur. So Yom Kippur is about, what's actually the essence of Yom Kippur? If you look at the first paragraph.
Asking God for forgiveness.
Yeah, it's each of us facing God and all the things we did wrong. Of course, he gives here two examples, so we may actually wonder why is he talking about people who don't eat kosher or people who have forbidden sexual relationship. So maybe it's because at that time it was the thing that people would do the most. I don't know if it's true.
His own guilt feeling.
Or maybe, yeah, maybe.
It's making a distinction between, those might be things that maybe, that they're not things between people. So in other words, another person doesn't really care about those things. So it's just making the point that there are just these very few things that Yom Kippur, that any dealing that you have with God is going to atone for. The rest of it, I'm afraid you've got to get out and do with everybody else and so around.
Absolutely, yes, yeah.
The things it refers to in the second paragraph, like physical harm, verbal harm and stealing, are tried in a court on a human level. Whereas if you eat something you shouldn't, you don't get flogged.
No.
You have to ask God forgiveness.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So there's something about the individual in themselves and the individual in the community of a society. Huh? So in a way, who cares about with whom you have sex or what kind of food you're eating? Of course, it's forbidden in Torah. There are things you can't do in Torah, but it's about a relationship with God. And this was written in Middle Age Egypt. So it was very much first. What's called? Comment on dit ça? No, face value. What was in the text was face value. Today, if you look at the Al-Chet, one of the main prayer we have on Yom Kippur, we talk about all these sins we've committed. It's about, not respect. It's more on an ethical level. But here, in a way, if you think about forbidden food, we can think about face value, what kashrut is about, but you can also think about how we eat ethically. And there's, for example, in the American Jewish community, there's loads of reflection about ethical kashrut, eating ethically, and for example, there are lots of young Jews today, even in Britain, who are vegan, vegetarian. For them, it's a very important aspect of religiosity.
And is it kosher to eat food that's produced by slave labor, for example? People who are not paid a living wage.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that ethical? You want cheap food, but at somebody else's expense.
Mm-hmm. Oh gosh, that's a very, when you have something cheap, it's always at someone else's expense. Like clothes, like.
It doesn't always have to be, but when you go cheap, when it's looking for the cheapest thing, it often will be.
Yeah.
So that's
Absolutely.
another issue that has cropped up a lot, thinking about.
But
Mm.
It's interesting because, sorry, you go first.
You go on.
Oh, I was going to say it's interesting because during the days in which the Torah was first put to paper, and most of this was first put to paper, there's lines in there about how to treat your slave. It was normal back then. It was something that was accepted as part of a society that people have slaves, whereas nowadays, sadly, it does still exist, but it's treated as a dirty secret. Companies don't want us to know that the food comes from slave labor, for instance.
But interestingly enough, even so, you could work. I think it was kind of a different, most of the time it was a different system. So indentured servants, because after so many years, people were free, and even your slave didn't work on Shabbat. Everybody got a day off. that sort of thing. So and they.
Right, so the kind of biblical meaning of slave is
different.
So it has different connotations to what we would think of as slave. It's more like servant.
Well,
somewhere in between.
They had a status.
Yeah, they had a status.
They had a status in the Bible. You couldn't beat your slave. You had. There was. There was a status, but they were still second class human beings. Okay, I'd like to go to the next bit, because it's also the next two paragraphs are very, very interesting. Even if this person returned the money she owed him, she must appease him and ask him to forgive her. Even if she only hurt him verbally, she must make amends and meet with him until he forgives us. So what's happening there?
I would like to know whether this gendered language that the translation is giving us is there in the Hebrew.
No.
It's very interesting that it's
Yes.
a she.
So no, it's not in the Hebrew at all. In the Hebrew, it's masculine.
Both parties are masculine.
Yeah.
But
Chavero.
maybe they're both of them friends, like two women talking.
I think it's a way to make English more.
Makes us realize that it's not just
Yes.
that everybody is here. It doesn't matter who you are, that you've got to.
Actually, it comes from the French here, I think, because a person in French is feminine. So whether we're talking about a man or a woman, it's feminine. So I guess we would translate it like une personne and elle. Yeah, but I don't know if it comes from French actually, but This is how it works in French. But it's always a very interesting question about the gender of a translation, because when Torah speaks about what someone has to do or not to do, it uses masculine because it's a language convention. But deep down in the back of her head, we tend to make it apply only to men, even if we know that it's a language convention. Especially Hebrew has not only masculine and feminine. So what's happening here? We have this person returned the money that obviously she stole, but she still must appease him and ask him to forgive her. Why is returning the money not enough?
That's the easy bit.
It's rarely considered enough.
You have to understand what you did wrong.
Bank robbery, for example, if you bring it back the next day, you're still going to...
Yes, you're still going to pay for it, yes. But here, I think, Janet, you're right.
Why should it be like that? Well, being without something you thought was yours, even momentarily, gives you grief. And when it's returned, you may be very pleased, but you've still had that bad experience.
The wrong has been done, yes, absolutely, yes. The hurt has been done. So you need to repair something. So you steal me £100 and you return the £100. You know how I felt when you took my £100 is still there.
Yeah.
So you need to ask forgiveness. I mean, if you return the £100, I will grant forgiveness, obviously.
Or double the money.
Or double the money, and then I will double forgive. But okay, more important, I think, if she only hurt him, I think in him, only hurt him verbally, I think we would change it today, because today, in our values, a verbal hurt is probably more hurtful than stealing money. You know, I can say something really nasty to someone. So what's worse, I'm taking £100 of you, or I'm really talking down, what's the word, disparaging you, you know? What's worse? I mean, the hurt is bigger. So again, the same, she must make amends and meet with him until he forgives her. Now, we've got a very interesting, if her fellow does not wish to forgive her, she should bring a line of 3 people who are friends with him, and they will approach him and argue that he should forgive her. So here you've got the rabbi coming in. Okay, let's put a process in place now, guys, because, you know, all these emotions and check, it's a bit complicated. If he does not give in to them, she must bring people a second time and a third time. If he still does not give in, they should leave him alone, and that person who did not forgive, he is the sinner. So in other words, 3 times, and whatever happens, you're forgiven. Because then the person doesn't grant forgiveness. It's interesting how, you know, the weight of a sin shifts. So what would you...
If she has to bring 3 people, but imagine if one of those people actually got a bit cross with her and hurt her verbally, then he'd have to bring 3.
Oh no.
If one of those 3 happened to just see somebody put their wallet down.
Yes.
I can see why this practice isn't widely followed anymore.
But I think this is really interesting because I actually saw something very similar, or heard of something very similar to this happening. That there were 2 people that I knew who had fallen out, and one of them had apologized to the other and said, I'm sorry, but I said, forget it, you know, I'm not putting up with it. And then someone who was friends with both of them went to the person who had refused to forgive and said, look, so-and-so is really, really, really sorry, really upset.
Mm-hmm.
He was in tears the other day because you weren't speaking to him anymore. Could you please forgive him? And on the basis of that petition, the person thought again and said, yeah, you know what, it's not good to hold a grudge. And he went and said, it's okay, and they made friends again.
Sometimes you need to bring in a third party. Huh? Sometimes you need someone else to do that. I mean, we know this in mediation, and when you have a conflict somewhere, sometimes you need to bring someone else.
I think that idea is really interesting because I've had that recently. I fell out with somebody over something that I am choosing not to forgive, and they had a mutual friend sort of contact me and be like, oh, you should forgive, forgive, oh, you're upsetting people. I'm like, I kind of felt, for me personally in that experience, like I was sort of being talked down to, and like my emotions weren't as important as making peace and just kind of, not rocking the boat, as it were. So my question is, what about things that are unforgivable? Like there's things here about like stealing money or saying insulting things, but what about things that are really unforgivable? What if say you had a divorce and you needed to cut that person out of your life for good, for your own safety? Are you still a sinner for not forgiving?
I guess, that the law is a kind of an ideal, so this is what ideally should happen. But reality in life, sometimes, some situations have no solution, and we need to live with that.
The second paragraph, never forgiven until she gives her fellow what she owes him, which is easy with money, but with physical harm, we don't want to go back to an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. So maybe there are instances of things that can never be appeased, can never be cancelled out. It's not possible to give somebody what you want them.
But please go ahead. Now I was thinking in terms of child abuse, for example. So child abuse is a big thing because you know that an abused child will carry this weight his or her entire life. At some point, in order to grow out of it, you need to make peace. So making peace doesn't mean to forgive. I'm not sure, if it means to forgive, but probably means at some point, I don't want to be defined by my past anymore. And that's a very long process. It's painful, difficult, etc. Because at the end of the day, what matters is you. What matters is the person you are, and how long will you be defined by the hurt you receive by a person, by a parent, a partner, a friend, But I always had this kind of fantasy that everything had a solution. And very often, not very often, I ended up sometimes in situations where there's no solution. You just have to admit, no, I can't forgive that. There's some extreme cases, but sometimes people are really, really nasty, and they hurt you deep down. They break something in you, and you can rebuild yourself. And there's this idea you have to forgive because it will make your life easier. I mean, if you can't, amen to that. But sometimes making your life easier is just to accept that this thing exists. It's part of your life, and it doesn't define you anymore. But it's a long process.
This is a difficult thing. I don't really, and I haven't ever really understood what forgiveness is. Does it mean not being angry about it anymore? Does it mean not holding a grudge? Because I can forgive someone in terms of I can start talking to them again and treating them in a good way. But does it mean not being angry about what they've done? I don't really understand.
That's a good
I still
point.
don't really understand what forgiveness is.
Forgiving someone. When something happens, a relationship changes. So you can reconnect with a person and find a new terrain to build a relationship, but it will never be the same. So I guess forgiveness is the capacity to come back, to accept that the relationship will be different from now on, and that you can build something, that is different. I guess this is forgiveness. I used to work with Shoah survivors when I was in France, and we used to invite students to come to talk to them, and they were just wow, because they're very tough. These people went through so much, and of course always the question of forgiveness: do you forgive? Do you forgive? And I remember one elderly lady, she said, you know, I'm fed up with people asking me to forgive. No, I'm not forgiving them. I can't forgive them. I will live alongside, but I can't forgive them. They killed all my family. What do I have to forgive here? And they were really shocked because we're in a culture where forgiveness is, you have to forgive because it's good. But she was I'm not saying she was very happy, but she could live her life by saying, these people, what they did to me is unforgivable. They are there. I'm not going to have any contact with them. So I guess forgiveness is when you can reconnect with someone.
But the God is going to forgive us as well?
So I didn't hear.
The God, is He going to forgive us?
It's His job.
No, it's not. We already have heaven and hell. We have to go through something.
I mean, in Judaism, there's no hell. But there is no concept of hell.
We're off the hook.
I mean, no, hell is here, so.
So that's why we're here. Is the punishment?
So the question of God forgiving us, gosh.
If somebody's wrong in your point of view, can God help you? Because you might think he's mentally or she's mentally ill. It's an illness.
Being God.
You can forgive them.
Ah, yes, okay. Sorry. Yes.
Because
Yeah.
God will forgive, will He? Whatever happens.
I mean,
I don't know, in the Bible it says if you worship the one God,
yeah.
send the army in, but I don't believe that.
I have no idea
That's what we're into at the moment in the High Holy Days, that trying to get to the point where we have made atonement and therefore God has forgiven us.
Mm-hmm.
And also, remember, it's only certain things
Start all over again.
that God can forgive. The other things we have to work out
Yes.
among each other, and that's not. That's one area God actually doesn't interfere there.
It's our job. It's your problem, guys. You misbehave with each other. You wronged each other. I don't care. I'm interested to see if actually you are good people. That's really what matters. I will forgive you as long as you try to be better next year. I'm not asking you, and we saw that first, I'm not asking to be perfectly righteous, because I'm not there. The makom is not there. Just be on the journey, and I think that God's forgiveness is about us. Yes, about the journey. Yes, I believe that.
Different from Christianity, well, Catholicism, where you go to confession, and you confess sins, and some of those may have involved hurting another person, and then the priest says, here's your penance, and after that you're forgiven by God.
Like in Islam, we have...
You have the same in Islam?
We have if you do this sin, you go for 70,000 years in the hell.
Oh.
And if you do this, and it depends on God. If his
in a good
mind
mood.
is good, it's good mood, he can forgive all your sins. But you pray all the life, you do all the good things, but you've done small mistake, he will forget everything what you've done whole life.
Oh my God.
And for one small thing, he can put you in hell for how many years? Then you go through. I don't
For
know.
one little thing, you can be everything. All the good
Vanished.
you've done.
Yeah, your passport cancels.
What cancels?
You are no more British citizen. So.
I mean, if we're supposedly made in God's image, then yeah, humans have good days and bad days. There's days where you can put up with a lot, and there's days where one little thing will just have you furious and shouting. So
It's quite a petulant God.
Funny
you know?
God.
Yeah, yeah.
Funny God, yeah.
In the
No.
Lord's Prayer, the Christian
Mm.
is forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those that trespass against us.
So what happens if
And
you
we
don't
ask God
forgive?
for that.
Yes. That's a very good point. If you don't forgive those who trespass you, so what's going to happen? Will God forgive your trespassing? Yeah. So, wow, it's a very. I mean, every year with Rosh Hashanah, especially Yom Kippur, I'm always very unsettled.
I don't think Adam sinned. I think he was given this brain of curiosity.
Oh yes.
What happens if...
It's a woman's fault.
Adam didn't do anything wrong. Eve didn't do anything wrong. She was tricked. That is not her fault. She was 6 days old.
Yeah,
she was
absolutely.
so young. She just got here.
Yeah.
Like, that was the first time anyone ever lied, ever. Like, it hadn't been invented yet. Like, the snake invented lying. She didn't know
Yeah,
that was
it's
going
a
to
snake,
happen.
absolutely.
Adam saw first lady and he fall in love straight away.
Yeah, men have a very, they don't resist flesh. Okay, so I think we've got a bit of readiness for what's happening on Tuesday and Wednesday. So Tuesday evening I will talk about resilience. Because I think it's important to, especially now, to remember that we have this capacity. And Wednesday, to be honest with you, I've started several sermons and I'm changing them all the time. I can't wait this to be over. I mean, you remember that.
Do you have an understanding of the final paragraph?
Oh, yes, yes. So we have to go to the Hebrew. Ve'im haya rabo holech. So if it was his rabbi, his Rav, his teacher, she must come and go even 1,000 times until he forgives her. So how do you understand that? So if it's just a normal person, you know, you try 3 times and the person can say, oh fine, I've done my job. But if the person who wrong another person is a teacher or a rabbi, let's keep a teacher because I don't want put too much pressure. So this person has to be more and more and more. Why do you think it's so?
Maybe in the light of the preceding paragraph, where in the case where the wrongdoer is not a teacher, if they try very hard and bring their 3 friends and do it again and again, and still they're not forgiven, then the wrongdoing is now on the part of the person who refuses to forgive. But this is saying, if you are wronged by your teacher, you have
Could
the right to
teacher
never
there
forgive
be-
them.
So the way I understood it,
It's saying the teacher carries an extra responsibility.
I'm wondering whether teacher could be like an umbrella term, like a mentor, like a parent, a guardian, someone who has...
so it's in
higher
Hebrew it's a
status.
Rav. A Rav is, it's, I mean, modern day it's a rabbi, but it's a teacher like a mentor, someone. My understanding of that, but I might be wrong, is that if a teacher is not able to forgive, then the whole teaching is actually cancelled. Because
It's not the teacher who's doing the forgiving. it's
Okay.
people.
So the teacher's
It's the man
the the sinner.
so she must
She's
bring
upset.
people a second
She's
and
upset.
3rd time.
She's upset.
Okay, so okay, oh yeah. So the teacher is the one who hurts.
Yeah.
Yes.
yes.
Okay.
She's got to go 1,000.
She's had to, gosh, until he forgives her. Is it because of the value of the teaching? Is it because?
It's the
It might be-
responsibility.
Yeah, position of trust.
I guess
Uh,
so
Yeah.
if you have a responsibility to somebody and
hurt
you
them.
hurt them, then you have to keep on trying to make amends. So
Okay.
if you're a teacher and you harm a student, whether deliberately or accidentally, if you're a guardian of someone young and you harm them, you have to keep making amends. Could it be that kind of thing?
I think there's something like that. Huh? Yes.
Something like
Okay, thank you. It was a very interesting discussion about Teshuvah. And maybe before I die, I will understand this a bit better. Or maybe after, in the afterlife. Because apparently everything is revealed after. So. Right, okay, so let's do the Kiddush now. Shall we go in the energy hall, or shall we bring the Kiddush here because it's warm in here?
Bring it here, there's a few of us.
Yeah, let's bring the Kiddush, yes. Okay, so who is online tonight? Oh, Hussein, David, Deborah, Michelle. I hope you understood what we're talking about, because the conversation went around a lot. So I thank you for coming tonight, and I wish you Shabbat Shalom, unless you want to stay for the Kiddush. So we'll do the Kiddush first, and you can go after. What happened?
We have this endless moth problem. It stems from years ago. Gosh, when we took in a bunch of clothes that we were going to just sort of
Going to
We were the
distribute those
storehouse.
to
Mm.
homeless persons.
Well, no, it was the stuff, yeah, it was for Lambeth Refugee Welcome, and they were holding a sort of bring and buy or whatever sale, and so we stored some of the clothes, and the clothes had moths. We've never been able to get them out of our house.
We have moths at home as well. You can't get rid of
You
them.
can't use anything
Yeah.
toxic with pets.
Yeah,
You can't use
absolutely.
moth killers, so we just keep putting up these things to catch them, but obviously the one in the hall is shot there, and we need to put up another one. It's too old because it didn't catch these little pieces.
Oh gosh.
And I wore this just like 2 weeks ago and it didn't have holes in it. I might take it and get it rewoven.
Make a flower.
Yeah.
Yes, well,
Both sides.
you look, I do not crochet, I do not knit, I do not do any of these things.
Uh-huh. Does anyone do that? Maybe you can ask.
Sorry.
Do you do crochet? Ahmad is doing crochet, so maybe he can do it for you.
I keep meaning to learn, but I haven't yet.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah, well, yeah, there's not too many holes, but I'm gonna have to, well.
They're only little ones. I wouldn't have noticed if you hadn't said. So it's
I
not.
haven't noticed it.
We're not looking at you like, oh look, she's got holes in her
Well,
clothes.
no, I know.
No, it
I
is
know.
there.
It's just annoying. But now I have to go home and look at the green one as well. We have to change that one at home.
Where do you live, Anna? Close by?
Yeah, I am. Just in Southampton. Like I walk here. So yeah, just not far at all. Yeah, it's very convenient to be nearby.
Sorry.
Careful. Who was here a minute ago?
A couple of chairs in the middle. Table. Chairs and tables.
Right. Thank you. יום השישי ויחולו השמיים וארץ וכל צבאם ויחל אלוהים ביום השביעי מלאכתו אשר עשה וישפוט ביום השביעי מכל מלאכתו אשר עשה ויברך אלוהים את יום השביעי ויקדש אותו כי בו שבת מכל מלאכתו אשר ברכה אלוהים לעשות ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, בורא פרי הגפן, אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני, אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר קידשנו במצוותיו, ורצה בנו, ושבת קודשו באהבה ורצון ינחילנו, זיכרון למעשה בראשית, הוא יום תחילה למקראי קודש, זכר ליציאת מצרים, כי בנו בחרת ואותנו קידשת מכל העמים, ושבת קודשך באהבה וברצון הנחלתנו. ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת, אמן. לחיים. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, המוציא לחם מן הארץ, אמן.
So I think we can just use that, right?
Can I ask, why are Jewish prayers mostly sung?
Mostly what?
Sung.
There's a tradition. Originally everything was sung.
I like it, it's nice.
Yeah, it's easy to remember, yes.
Before things were printed out or whatever.
Yeah. Arabic thing is traditional.
Yeah, in Arabic it's the same, huh?
All over, every part of the world they sing to the God. Even in India,
Same tune in place. Different tune in different places.
like Hindu, they use too much music in there.
And music is, yeah, absolutely.
Muslims don't use music, but they try to make very musical.
Mm-hmm. Oh, sorry.
When they conducted services in the High Church in Catholicism, didn't they conduct a service in Latin and they were all sung?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's just the Church of England that's forgotten that tradition.
I don't know, yeah, I went to a Roman Catholic primary school and we went to church, I think about monthly with the school, and yeah, obviously there was like the hymns and stuff, but then just like kind of prayers and reading from the Bible were just spoken. And then the first time I ever attended a Jewish religious service, which was a funeral, practically everything had a tune, and I was just like, wow, I love this.
But I think, as Janet said, you know, when you learn the texts, it's easier to learn the melody. And also the liturgy was very fixed. It's in modern Sidurim, the liturgy changes a bit, but in the past, the liturgy, Ashkenazi liturgy, the Mizrahi, the Sephardi, you know, they were quite fixed. It was always the same text.
No, actually that's not quite true. Because the basic form was fixed, but that's why there's so many variations, because this town would...
Yeah, I mean, in each tradition, they had the fixed, yeah.
Maybe have a different prayer on that topic, and the rest ones kind of got kept.
Yeah, I mean, they had traditions there. There's the Italian, yeah.
Extemporize a lot. Now it's much easier because we've got a written text. You don't have to make up your own.
So bits that are in italics, they have been going for hundreds and hundreds of years. Like in the Amidah, each blessing finishes with a bit where we're supposed to say it's in italics, it's a cutting off. And that hasn't changed.
So the Amidah was...
In all time, all places.
The Amidah has changed. So when we started to print prayer books, I'm not talking about 15th century, but later, when people started to have their own prayer books, let's say maybe 18th century, 17th, 18th century, where all the texts were exactly the same in all books in one tradition. So the Chazan sings the service, and at some point people join for, actually the piece that we highlight in our services are the piece that's been highlighted for many, many centuries, like Adonai Sfatai Tiftach and and the Khatima of the first 3 blessing of Yamida. But all the rest was, and then people would join on certain sentences when the Nusach changed.
In the Amidah, let's take the weekday Amidah.
Mm-hmm.
Then we say there are what, 17?
19,
19.
yes.
I believe, and you can tell me whether I'm right, that those 19 have been the 19 for many centuries.
Yeah, yeah. So there are some, I mean, the theme is the same,
It's
yeah.
the same bit,
If you
yeah,
went,
and that's my point,
just the final bit, just the Khatima,
Mhm.
which is the thing.
Mm,
So
yeah.
I'm suggesting that that has never changed, and it's been the same in all places.
But for example, when you say at the end of the first blessing, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham, Vezrat Sarah, in Orthodox tradition, mention only Abraham. Yeah. But but the theme of the blessing is always the same. In Orthodox synagogue, how is it? I don't remember which way it works, but the Amidah is first said silently and then repeated by the Chazan. I don't remember if it's that.
Yeah, that's what it goes.
Yeah, first is said silently and then repeated to make sure that the people actually say the right thing together. But if you go to Orthodox synagogue, you'll see that people rush. And you see there are so many Kaddish in the Orthodox service because people know, they come back for the Kaddish. And you've got this Kaddish that separate, that divides the different parts of the service. Yeah.
So as soon as you hear that,
Yeah, you know where you are.
hurry up because it's about to move
Yes.
to the next bit.
It's so quiet, it's so fast, it's like all together, and then they delve again into their prayers, and then many people actually talk about something else. Because in an Orthodox synagogue, the Chazan is fulfilling the mitzvah of prayer for the people. So you just listen. It's like the shofar, like the Megillat Esther. All these mitzvot are performed by the Chazan. And in a way, you just listen to it, and it's fine. Then you fulfill the obligation of praying. In a liberal synagogue, it's different because each of us is responsible for their own prayer. So this is why we have to stay together. It's never, in a liberal synagogue, it's always very quiet because people are very focused. In the Orthodox synagogue, it's kind of like it. It's a bit of a mess,
Like in mosque, Muslims do azan. The Jews do azan as well in Israel. Why not here?
What's azan? What do
Azan is like to call for prayers.
So it's Barechu. When we say Barechu et Adonai Vavarach, it's the same. At the start of a Shema, the first of the two main prayers, we say Barechu. It's when we stand. We say it's the equivalent of a call to prayer, and it's the first time in the service that we have to be at least 10 people.
The other stuff is all preliminary.
Yes,
Praying to get ready to pray kind of thing.
it's foreplay.
We'll pray.
It's a bit fine. Yeah, so the halachic bit, the legal stuff starts with Barechu, and we have to be 10.
10.
10, yes.
Except you don't.
Yeah, of course, yeah. And I used to be much stricter with that, but when people come to this, they make the effort to come to the synagogue. So if we're 5 or 6, I still do the service because otherwise it's punishing the people who are coming. You can still do the service, but you don't do it together. So people do it on their own, which I think is kind of a shame. Anyway, it's interesting the way people pray differently, but. And when you have Orthodox Jews coming, I did once a bar mitzvah at VL. Oh my God, it was one of the best moments of my time at VLGS. Yeah, I think you can.
Yeah, Helen's got a response to your discussion.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Just put it up and then maybe...
Oh, Helen, yeah, okay. Helen's going back to her question about the last paragraph. She, as a teacher, must ask repeatedly for forgiveness because if her pupil withhold forgiveness, then according to the preceding verse, he is the sinner and presumably no teacher wants to create a sinner. Mm-hmm. Very clever. And all the creation of a sinner by a teacher must be avoided if at all possible, because otherwise the teacher and the teachings are undermined or rendered meaningless. Thank you, Helen. I think you got a very interesting point here. Thank you. Yeah, it's very good. Yes, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, maybe I'm going to say bye-bye to you, so we, I don't know what. Shabbat Shalom, I'm tired tonight, so see you tomorrow.